Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. And today we'll be looking at the region of New England and the competitive House seats in that region. So we have just under, I want to say, 3 weeks till the election, and we've got a lot of seats to talk about that we'll be talking about in our two final House predictions and some regions. So we already did Southern California. They have a lot of competitive House seats. They were going to do the Midwest after New England, and I think I'll also maybe do a deep South overview, although there aren't too many competitive seats there, but I think some of them are worth watching. So New England's the one we're doing today, though, and I think New England's really interesting because right now the Democrats hold every single one of these seats. And that isn't too surprising because New England's a very Democratic area. Obviously, every one of these states voted for Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Obama, and the only one of these states have gone red in the past 22 years was New Hampshire, which voted for Bush in 2000, but it was very close, and it hasn't voted Republican federally since. And the only electoral vote that any Republican candidate has received from this region is Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. He won this second district of Maine, which is the more rural part. But again, it's represented by a Democrat in Congress, so it's always competitive, but this year could be a prime chance for Republicans to pick it up. And I think that's where we're going to start because, again, this is the only seat that voted for Trump in 2020. And I think it's really interesting because it is truly the prime example of incumbency versus trends. So Maine, this seat is a Trump plus 7 seat. It is the most Republican seat behind only Alaska that a Democratic incumbent is being forced to defend. No, actually, sorry, that isn't true. It is I should say most behind Alaska. It's the only competitive seat that behind Alaska. It's the second most competitive seat in terms of Republicanness that the Democrats have to defend. Technically, there are two more, which are Arizona 2, which is Trump plus 8, and Florida, the Al Lawson seat in Florida. But both of those are functionally dead on arrival, and they both have less than 5% chances of victory. Whereas Maine is this seat's actually competitive the same way Alaska is actually competitive. So functionally, the only seats you should be paying attention to that are super Republican that the Democrats defending are Maine 2 and Alaska at large. So just wanted to, I could throw that out because technically it isn't true, but we all know that Tom O'Halloran and Al Lawson are going down by a lot next month. So let's talk about this seat. So again, it's Trump plus 7. It's quite Republican federally, but it has a Democratic incumbent, Jared Golden. And Jared Golden is a really good performer. In 2020, he ran a Trump plus 9 seat and he won by 6%. So he ran, almost 15% ahead of Joe Biden. And additionally, he did so, I think in fairly interesting circumstances, because in 2020, what we saw was House Democrats underperformed basically every expectation for them. Go back to 2020 and look at even Red Eagle Politics' House map. Democrats did worse than that, which just shows how bad that night was for them because they had a 5% chance of losing the House coming into, the election. They came pretty close to losing it, and they only won because they held on to a close number of seats that Republicans didn't even think that were in play, right? Democrats held on to the House because they won Cindy Axne's seat, Abigail Spanberger's seat, the seat that was held by Connor Lamb, some of the Michigan seats, the seat in, or I should say, Malinowski's seat, right? All these seats were a lot closer than expected because, they went blue by 2 or 3 points, right? But the Republicans thought they'd lose those seats by 10 points, and they were shocked that they actually were able to come close to them. And they were also shocked they were able to win a lot of the lean Democratic seats, like Mike Garcia, Nancy Mace, Ashley Hinson, Mariannette Miller Meeks, Claudia Tenney, Young Kim, right? These are all candidates that ran in seats that were considered lean Democratic and won as Republicans. So again, Republicans had a really good night in 2020 all across the board, especially against Democratic incumbents in Trumpy seats. They smoked, for example, Xochitl Torres Small in New Mexico, who is thought to be in a toss-up race on election day. I had to lose him by a point. She lost by 7 because she was in a double-digit Trump seat, and she didn't overperform by enough because polarization killed, Colin Peterson, Xochitl Torres Small. It resulted in bad results for Democrats in states like Iowa and in Ohio and basically all across the Midwest. Democrats didn't play as well as they thought they would play in a lot of the seats in Texas, right? So polarization knocked off a ton of Democrats in 2020 because the Trump voters came home for their Republican congressional candidates. In Maine, that did not happen. Jared Golden basically did as well as Democrats hoped they'd be able to do in other places, right? Like he overperformed by 15 points in Maine. Okay, if Xochitl Torres Small overperformed by 15 points in New Mexico, she would be a representative and she would have won by 3.5 points. So Golden basically did what most other House Democrats could not in 2020, which was to hold on in Republican-leaning territory. And I think he mostly did this because the Republicans gave up on his opponent. Like, at least in New Mexico against Torres Small and Minnesota against Colin Peterson, they, like, funded their challengers and, like, actually expected to, like, be competitive. They gave up on Maine. If you look at the polls from Maine 2020, they all showed Jared Golden winning by, like, a lot more than he won by. So I think his win in 2020 was impressive, but I think it's getting a bit overrated because people forget how it was basically, like, a safe D seat by the time the election rolled around. And like it was very much a right like it was one of the seats where he won, so like no one really cares, but like it was actually not as good of a performance as people expect. And I think people are making the same mistake this year. People are saying he's going to hold on by 2 or 3 points, but the thing is, this is a redder environment than 2020. We know this. I would be stunned if the 2022 is as blue or bluer than 2020. So that already gives a few points to a Golden's challenger. It's a right trending seat. It's one of the seats where the Dobbs decision doesn't really help Democrats that much. And Republicans are actually going to try to beat Jared Golden this time. Because, again, in 2020, they basically gave up on him by, like, the summer. So, now that they're running a better candidate, Bruce Poliquin, who, again, I don't think is that great, but I think, he's actually served in the district. So I think he's better than Dale Crafts, who's basically just a nobody. They ran as a sacrificial lamb against Golden in 2020. Now that they've got that, they're probably going to be able to, knock him off. So I rate the seat as lean Republican. It's a very bearish rating on Golden. A lot of people will tell you it's a toss-up or leaning Democratic or even likely Democratic. So this is a hot take. Like, I'm in the minority here, and I know that. But I want to be consistent. I don't want to predict Democrats to do better in suburban seats that are trending left while also claiming Republicans are not going to be doing well in rural seats that are trending right. And I think Golden is a prime example of a guy who has overperformed in the past, but it's going to all come crashing down. And I think he loses by 2 or 3 points when it's all said and done. So still a solid performance, but I don't think it'll be enough to get him over the line. So our next seat, and I should fill this out, by the way, our next seat is New Hampshire 1. So New Hampshire 1 is this seat. It's on the coast of New Hampshire, and it is Chris Pappas' seat. Pappas is the incumbent Democrat, and originally this was thought to be like a pure toss-up race because, again, look at the 2020 data for the seat. New Hampshire 1 only voted for Biden by 5.8 or 5.9%. So it was by all means, like, any national environment swing would put this seat right in the field of play for Republicans. Because, again, it only voted 1.5 to the left of the country. So, again, all you need would theoretically be an R plus 1.5 environment to knock off Pappas. But the thing is, Republicans don't really have that because they're running, first of all, they're running Carolyn Leavitt, who is a disaster candidate. She is, running on Stop the Steal. She's running on super pro-Trump issues in a suburban left-running Biden seat. And her campaign has received no money. Federal Republicans have basically given up on her, kind of they gave up on Golden's opponent in 2020. And Pappas is a good incumbent. He outperforms fundamentals consistently, and having Maggie Hassan on the ballot is going to help him because she'll probably do decently well statewide, and I expect her to carry the district statewide probably by 3 or 4 points, potentially even more, because we just got news that the Republicans are giving up on Don Bolduc as well. And so I do think that this is a sleeper flip because I think a lot of people have counted it out. I'm not counting it out just yet, but the Republicans clearly do not feel confident about their chances here, and they basically have conceded that Pappas is probably going to win re-election because they're running Leavitt. And so unless we see a massive swing towards Republicans in New Hampshire, which we probably aren't getting because, again, they just cut off their Senate candidate there, I don't think I see Pappas losing. I think he's in a lean D race, and while he has a path to losing, it's not something I'd bet on right now. Now, the other seat in New Hampshire is even more, I think, concerning for Republicans because this is Ann Custer's seat. Custer is a longtime incumbent. She's very well known. She outperformed fundamentals in 2020, and I think she even outperformed Biden by a few points as well. So she's in a left-running seat that was very pro-Biden. She did even better than that in 2020. So she'll likely be fine. She is in a Biden plus 9 seat, as you can see right here. It was pretty blue in 2020. She's good incumbent. Republicans don't really have that great of an opponent for her. They haven't really fundraised enough money to actually actively try to knock her out. So I'd be pretty surprised if she loses. If Custer does lose, that'll be a sign of a massive red tsunami, right? Because her seat was 4.5 points to the left of the country. So to begin with, you need like at least an R plus 4.5 environment. Throw in the fact that she's a good incumbent, the Republicans are not playing here. You probably need like an R plus 6 or R plus 6.5 environment to knock her off, and that's red wave territory for sure. So I'm pretty sure she's going to win. Again, if she does lose, it'll be really bad for Democrats because they're losing a lot of seats if she does go down. But for now, I'm pretty comfortable saying that she's going to win by 5 or 6 points, maybe even more, because again, I'm being conservative here. Now, so let's go to Connecticut. So the first deal we do in Connecticut will be Connecticut District 5. This is Johanna Hayes' seat, and she's a fairly good incumbent. She's not amazing. I think I'd call her above replacement level. But the thing about her is that she has not really faced like a serious Republican challenge because her seat's been pretty blue historically, and Connecticut hasn't really been good for Republicans in a very long time. Because like the only time that they're actually like competitive statewide recently was, I mean, I guess 2014, but even then I don't really count that. But like 2018 was like the last time Republicans were competitive statewide, and it's like the only time they actually ran a good candidate statewide. And it was obviously Bob Stefanowski, and Stefanowski came really close to winning in 2018. But the problem was that was more of a local thing because Dan Mallow was super unpopular, and that really brought down Ned Lamont, which is why again he ran into blue wave and only won by 3 points, right? And so, I would be pretty like Stefanowski won the seat in 2018, like as you can see right here, he did quite well all across the state. But like the fact that he couldn't even get like his candidates close in 2018 is still pretty embarrassing for him, and I would be quite surprised if he does nearly as well this time as around, considering he's down like double digits in the polls in 2022 in this rematch. And again, Hayes, decent incumbent. Republicans don't really have any interest in, I think, actually beating her because like they kind of wrote her off after the Dobbs decision. She's up by 11. Or her district is Biden plus 11. I think she'll win by like 5 or 6. So that's another Democratic hold. And then Connecticut District 2, excuse me. This is a Biden plus 11 seat. It's similar to Hayes, although unlike in Hayes' seat, the Democrats have a better incumbent. Joe Courtney, obviously, like Hayes is relatively new. Courtney has been, I think, serving since like 2006 or 2008. And so he's been winning for a while here. He's decently well known. And I think Republicans, like, yeah, in a true red wave, it would be competitive. But like, again, Connecticut isn't looking good for Republicans statewide. They look poised to lose both the governor race, the Senate race by double digits. And so, yeah, I think it's going to stay blue for now, which leaves the only competitive seat left in Rhode Island. This is Rhode Island District 2. District 2 is really interesting, and I think it's maybe not the most competitive seat in New England. It might be, New Hampshire 1 or Maine 2, but it is really, really interesting because it is it's kind of like the reverse Maine. It's like the test of like, can a good non-incumbent beat a lackluster, open seat guy in an environment hopefully good? Because like there are like a lot of questions at this seat, so I'm going to just describe it. So this is a race of Alan Fung versus Seth Magaziner. Fung is the Republican, Magaziner is the Democrat. Magaziner is the state treasurer of Rhode Island, so he's running for federal office now. He won in 2014 and 2018. He won by like I think 15 points in 2014, so he had a fairly good showing that back then. In 2018 he was uncontested, so we can't really tell how he did in 2018. But he's like he's fine. He's about like generic Democrat. He's replacement level. He won the seat in 2014, which was a red wave. So I think he'll do. I don't think there's any like real concerns about his electability. But the reason the seat is competitive is because of Alan Fung. Fung's a really good Republican recruit. He's probably the best recruit in all of the Northeast, realistically here. He's the mayor of the city of Cranston, which is the largest city in the district, or I think maybe the second largest. I'm not exactly sure, but it's influential. And he's ran for governor in 2014 and 2018. And he lost both times, but he did decently well. Especially because in 2018, he actually ran like pretty even with Trump in 2016. So despite like a 7-point swing nationally, he was able to kind of hold his ground in Rhode Island. And he actually came close to carrying the seat in 2018. So, he's done decently well here in the past. But here's the thing. Fung is getting really overrated and really quickly because the polls are like really good for him right now. So as you can see, he's ahead in every poll. A lot of these polls are by large margins. Suffolk has him up by 9. He's up by 6 in Fleming and Associates. He led. Where's this other? Yeah, he led Magaziner by 5 back in June. But like really, like most recent polls have had him up by 6, 3, and 9. And most importantly, Magaziner's own internal had him down by 3. So like Magaziner was trying to go be like, oh well, actually I'm not losing by a lot. I'm only losing by 3, which is like a very bad sign for our campaign. It's like a sign you're losing confidence, right? And so, like, I don't really know why Magaziner released that, because again, it's still a really bad sign. Like, he was getting totally clowned on Twitter for like releasing a poll showing him down 3 points in a Biden plus 14 seat. Because again, this is blue territory. This should not be super competitive, but it is because of Fung running a good campaign. But here's the thing, Magaziner, I don't think, like, Fung's leads in the polls are very inflated, because if you look at the polls, he hasn't even cracked 46. His best poll was this Following Associates poll, which, by the way, overestimated Republicans in 2020 and 2018. If you look at their most recent polling data, they showed the race for governor 5 points closer than it actually ended up being. They showed the race for Senate 4 points closer than it ended up being. They literally had, in 2012, they did a Rhode Island 1 poll. They had Cicilline only winning by a point. He won by 12. And again, they just consistently overstate Republican support. They've done it in like their past 7 polls. And so the fact that they have Fung at 46 isn't too great for him, because again, he should be like comfortably ahead in a 49, 50% in a Fleming poll, but he's not. And so, I think 45, 46 is actually a good estimate of where he's at right now. But the thing is, every on the side in these polls, they're all Democrats, just don't really know enough about Magaziner, but are okay with Fung. Because again, Fung's a moderate. He's well liked in the area. So like some Democrats are like okay with voting for him. But the thing is, just like the same way the Republicans are going to come home for Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, Democrats are going to come home for Seth Magaziner in Rhode Island. He's consistently trailing Fung, but again, Fung's only at 43, 45, 46% of the vote, and I think that's a pretty big red flag. I want to see a poll that has Fung at like 48 or 49 before I actually move the race to toss-up, because right now I'm still keeping it lean D. Again, the fact that Magaziner is down in his own internal is pretty bad for him, but like, again, most of these undecideds are just Democratic voters just haven't come home for him. So I think he'll win by 5 points at the end of the day. It'll be a pretty big polling miss, although again, House polls are really goofy, so it's hard to assess. Fung's going to do really well in Cranston. I think he wins the city of Cranston by a few points, because again, like looking at the 2018 governor map where he overperformed, like he overperformed Trump, he like basically ran even with Trump everywhere except for Cranston, where he did like 20 points better than Trump, which is why Cranston itself swung like massively against Gina Raimondo, but the rest of the state stayed pretty stagnant and maybe trended a little bit towards Fung, but not really. And so I think we're going to see a similar thing here. Fung's going to do really well in Cranston. He has his home base there. He'll kind of do what Pat Ryan did in Ulster and what Mark Molinaro did in Dutchess. But like outside of that city, I think we're just going to see a pretty generic swing towards Fung. Like he'll probably do 7 points better, maybe 6 points better than Trump in most of these other cities, but I don't think he's going to actively totally overperform by like 20 points, because like he needs to outrun Trump by 15 points, and I think he'll do that in Cranston, but I don't think he'll do it anywhere else. So Fung, good candidate, but I think he's getting a bit overrated, and it's still Biden plus 14 seats, still left running, still affected by the Dobbs decision, still can be carried by Dan McKee at the statewide level for all intents and purposes. So yeah, I have this race as lean Democratic, and I think the Fung hype is pretty exciting, but I don't think it's super consistent with other things we know. So that's it. That's my New England House prediction. I think Republicans will pick up a seat, but I think they're going to fall short in New Hampshire, fall short in Rhode Island, and not be able to pick off any seats in Connecticut. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and I'm going to see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.